All right. Good afternoon, folks. We are at an earlier time today because this is the time that my guest was available. So we work around the guest.
Thank you.
If I can get a 5x5 from all the mods, because we're now up on 4 platforms for this one. So let's see where we're at. Um, Getting all my computers and monitors set up here, and then we will let loose. Get this paused. I'm watching in the chat, Ash. Give me a 5x5 and we'll keep going. Hugs to you too. Hi, Duppy. Love you guys. Well, so my guest today is Herschel Zahnd. If you've been following me for a while, you know because he shows up a lot where I'm at for obvious reasons. Full disclosure: this is my husband.
Hi.
My other half, better half, all the above. So, how do you want to start? Because it's about your journey through this
Okay.
particular. So, where do you want to start? And I'll keep adding in.
All right. So, what we're going to talk about on this episode of What We Should Have Learned is kind of esoteric, right?
Yeah, a lot of it is.
And what's funny is it's literally nothing new.
Oh, I know.
The
Yeah.
the concepts in all, I guess we're actually going to talk about 3 different books today.
Mhm.
The concepts that we're going to talk about in each of these books are not new. In fact, they're tens of thousands of years old.
Mhm.
They are
Yep.
things that have been learned, forgotten about, rediscovered as new information,
Yeah.
and then learned and sometimes suppressed forcibly by governments.
Frequently suppressed.
So this all started when I am a big fan of Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs, big deep voiced Mike Rowe.
Mhm.
And he had on this guy on his podcast, which is called The Way I Heard It, which I did not look up that episode number, so I need to look that up. He had on a gentleman named James Nestor, and James Nestor was promoting a new book called Breathe.
This was a year and a half ago, maybe?
About 2.5 years ago.
Was it that long?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I discovered it.
Okay.
And Breathe is an interesting book. It is a book all about what Mr. Nestor calls pulmonauts.
Thank you, Battle Axe Cindy, for the 1,000 gold pills. Bless you, honey. Thank you. Thank you, Victoria, for the shades. Thank you, honey. Love you guys.
So, pulmonauts are people that research human breath, and this actually comes on the tail. And when I say,
See, I always think of cosmonauts.
yeah, it very much is like cosmonauts, but he calls them pulmonauts. That's his words, not mine. So this comes on the tails of his first book that he published called Deep, which is about freediving. Now that book is really freaky. If you've ever wanted to just look at something that's so extreme, it even makes me blanch. Take a deep breath and dive down 300 feet with nothing but goggles and fins.
And somehow they don't get the bends.
Well, 300 feet is not. You can get the bends going down that.
Yeah,
but
like
it's
that's
hard.
what I always.
But it's the reason for
they
it.
do it.
They don't get the bends because they're not on compressed air. Because
that makes
the
sense.
bends, for those of you who don't know what the bends are, the bends is a scuba diving condition that has nitrogen that builds up in your blood as you're resurfacing from a very deep depth underwater. It can actually have bubbles that bubbles of nitrogen that come up in your blood, and it can actually kill you. But because you're not breathing that nitrogenated air that you would get in a scuba tank,
right? Okay, that makes sense.
You're not going to have that. Now there are myriad other problems with that, but Deep and Breath are 2 books by James Nestor, and he explores all the different things that we have forgotten about or never knew or were never taught about breathing.
Gotcha.
And one of the first things they discuss is that human beings are the worst breathers in the animal kingdom. There is no animal on the face of the planet that breathes as badly as we do. Yeah. And one of the main reasons for this is processed food.
That makes sense.
The reason that we have crooked teeth, the reason that our eye, like the literally reason why we have eye bags, skin diseases, all of these things are because we don't breathe properly and because we don't chew properly. We'll get into that in a little bit. This book goes into all of these different ideas, all of these concepts. It introduces you to different medical techniques
Right.
that have been discovered and rediscovered
Mm-hmm.
from time memoriam,
Mm-hmm.
talking about scoliosis. There is
That was a
there's
really
a scene in the
interesting
book
one. And
that
that's in
has,
Breathe. We're talking about
yeah, we're
Breathe right
talking
now.
mainly, I'm going to talk mostly about Breathe in reference to other
Yeah,
books.
Breathe was the one I did put in the show notes because I felt like that was the one that had the most. Like, if you want a deeper understanding, you can look at his first book, Deep. And then there's another book that we'll talk about for a different reason later on.
Yeah.
But Breathe is the main one if you want to really dive into this subject.
Yeah.
Should be in the show notes. And I know there's links that we can drop in. The mods will be doing that probably.
Yes.
Because they're fabulous. Hi, Fallen.
So there was a young lady in Germany in the early 19 teens who suffered from debilitating scoliosis, which scoliosis is the twisting of the spine. And at that point, the disease was pretty much thought to be a death sentence. You just
you
laid
just
in a bed until you died.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
she was taken out on a school trip in a wheelchair and saw hot air balloons inflating and thought, why can't I do that? So she started to experiment with breath, with holding her breath, with expanding her chest.
Mhm.
She went on to more or less cure herself, if there is a cure for scoliosis. She cured herself to the point that she was fully functional, fully mobile,
Mhm.
founded an institute where she bought this little building with a courtyard, and she would bring women afflicted with scoliosis. They would go sit bare chested in this courtyard and breathe.
Mhm.
Government, puritanical government that they were at that point in time, said, no, 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 this is very bad. You're a naughty person, and tried to shut her down. And she persisted, fought them. And by the time she was 60 years old, she started this when she was a teenager.
Right.
By the time she's 60 years old, the German government is saying, oh no, this is really good. You should be doing this. We need to do this. Now, of course, the techniques are lost.
Yeah.
Another interesting little vignette from the book is the story of Charles Stow, who was a North Carolina choral instructor.
Oh, yeah. That was it.
So, like all choral instructors, I've dealt with many of these people in my life, but very bombastic, very full of himself, and had these techniques. And he would get opera singers from the Met and increase their ability to hold notes and their ability to breathe properly. And he would get them to where they were breathing in a way that would even prevent them from getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
And the VA was having a horrible, I don't want to use the demic words, but an endemic or a pandemic of emphysema.
Right.
And they had these people who were stage 4 emphysemics that had been more or less consigned to hospice care.
Yeah. It described them as just being lined up in beds and just they were going to be in these beds till they died. Like
And
they were
generally
just
they
there.
were.
Yeah.
So he went in.
That's what they'd been like. There was no treatment at that time.
Within a month, he had them walking out.
Yeah.
And in certain cases, he had them sailing from New York to Florida on ships.
Yeah.
I mean, there were lots of these. And you know, the VA, this is not a doctor, this is a choral teacher, and eventually ran him out of town because he wasn't able to teach the technique. Again, the man was very full of himself, and he thought that the technique was too complicated for anybody else to understand. So there's a lot of unfortunate ego there that was lost. There's only one video of the guy doing this technique, and it's from a choral festival in Aspen, Colorado, I believe in the 90s. So we really don't understand his technique fully.
Yeah.
But he coached the Olympics.
Yeah.
He had Olympic swimmers in different universities. All of this through breath. Now, everything I want to stop real quick and just say that anything that I'm talking about, I am not a medical professional. I'm a 41-year-old man who decided to run a marathon for the first time at age 40. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But
yeah, but you were never like you. I mean, you played some sports, but you were not like
no. I
mean,
I really
so
didn't.
like it is a huge change for him. This is a person that was not. I mean, he was healthy, but he wasn't like quarterback.
Yeah,
that was not him.
I was not somebody who went out for a supposed 45-minute run and do a half marathon, which is what I did on New Year's Eve. So all that to say, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a health and fitness professional. I'm just somebody who's gotten very interested in what I wasn't told about breathing. And this is coming from somebody who is a lifetime singer. I have been singing on a semi-professional to professional level for 25 years.
Yeah.
And there are things that I have learned throughout this process that are counterintuitive to everything I've ever been taught about breath. One of the things that has happened through this process is I no longer have exercise-induced asthma, which I used to have. Now,
I remember you had the inhaler and everything.
Yeah, I used to have to hit an inhaler a couple times a day. Don't have these problems anymore because I'm learning how to breathe. Now, what's interesting, I want to get back to processed food. So all this to say, not a medical professional, not a fitness professional, consult someone you trust, okay? When you introduce processed food into any culture, you have crooked teeth within one generation and you start to have the face falling apart within two. What do I mean by face falling apart? If you look at all of the skulls going back millennia, we had wider faces, we had wider nostrils. This was largely because we chewed all day. Our mouths have become genetically too small to accommodate the number of teeth that we have. So what do?
They didn't used to have to pull wisdom teeth. Yeah. There was room for them. Now there's not room.
Exactly. So what do? We pull wisdom teeth. We now alter our mouths, which makes them
to accommodate the
even smaller.
Right.
So our airways constrict. This is why we have sinus issues. Most people have sinus issues to the point that they cannot breathe properly. That was what Mike Rowe had discovered through reading this book. He actually went and had the surgery done, which is a horrific surgery to recover from. I have a good friend of mine, Jason William Allen, who's recovered from that surgery, but they put brutal. These giant stents up in your nose and it's nasty. But when you start to breathe afterward, there are people who are taking breaths for the first time.
Yeah.
Most people are the dreaded mouth breathers.
Yeah.
And fun fact, and this one really struck me. You always hear teenage girls talking about, oh, get away from me, mouth breather. Women are more notoriously mouth breathers than men.
Really?
Women actually tend to be mouth breathers more than men are.
Maybe it's because we're always talking.
I want it stated for the record. She said that. I did not insinuate that. Scott, 17. We have been together. We've been married for 20 years in May.
We'll be 20 years this year. We dated
23 years,
I
think,
2
total.
years?
Yeah.
Because we met in college.
2-3 years,
Yeah. We're aging backwards. We decided once we both hit 40, we're like, you know what? We're just going to age backwards. That's what we're going to do. So
beautiful. So you get all of these things that start to happen because we eat processed foods. Why? Because we used to have to chew tough meats, barleys. We chewed for hours upon hours upon hours a day.
In comparison, now we don't take the time for any of that. We would rather just throw it all in a blender and suck it down a straw on the way while we're driving.
I mean, I'm as guilty as that as anybody. I have a smoothie every morning, but it's because we're not chewing, and that is actually decreasing the musculature in our jaws. And again, something else that Breathe talks about.
Did you bring the toner? Did you bring?
No, I did not. It's downstairs. What we're learning is the more you're chewing,
there's tools.
Yes, there are
tools that will help you.
What we're learning is as you chew, that act of chewing, that actually releases stem cells.
We hear a lot about stem cells, don't we?
Natural stems. And it's basically the type of stem cells that the sucking motion when a child is nursing that allows the mortar to stitch together the plates of your cranium. These are the stem cells that are released by chewing. We're getting very microbiotic now, but they have proven, and James Nestor helped to prove this, you can actually regrow bone. Because what do we hear? By the time we're 35, you're starting to lose muscle, you're starting to lose bone mass. Women, again, by the time you're 35, you're starting to get that. Yes, I have heard of mewing, Ash. That is one of the techniques they discuss. We're not going to do it because I'm not very good at it. Really? But yes, it is that
would be entertaining, though.
That is a very interesting technique. But women, of course, have osteoporosis issues that come up much more than men do. And these techniques and through breathing, you can actually start to reverse some of those and regrow bone.
Well, see, and this is what I find so interesting, that there are ways for you to stimulate your body to produce stem cells. Because when we were taught about stem cells, you always think about it with babies, the young, you think about the placenta and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that it's possible
by chewing
at my age, I'm midlife, I could create new stem cells. I'm super excited about that. I don't have to worry about where they're coming from. I can just produce my own. If you know what I'm saying.
What they've proven is that the human body is so much infinitely more capable of healing itself without medical intervention than we've ever realized. And I mean, there is anecdotal evidence of cancer, of
Yeah.
debilitating scoliosis, all these different conditions that we barely have treatments for now, and that the treatments are generally rather horrific.
Yeah.
They can be cured, or there's anecdotal evidence rather, that they can be cured
Way to
through
cover
the
that.
simple act of breathing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that is, of course, also to say we don't want to say if you are dealing with cancer right now, you just breathe a whole bunch and you're going to be better. Don't go get chemo. That's not what we're saying. I'm
Every
saying
case is
all of these
different.
things are supplemental.
Yeah.
What I have noticed is I have larger breath capacity.
Mhm.
I do not have as much issue with my heart rate when I'm training, because
No.
I'm doing sometimes 45 minutes to an hour of either swimming or biking or running. I rarely peak my heart rate above 165. That never used to happen. And generally, when I'm running, I'm sitting somewhere around 140. When I'm swimming, I'm at about 129.
Mhm.
So these are much lower numbers. I've had a 40 plus beat per minute decrease in my training
Mhm.
simply through breathing.
Yeah.
A lot of this comes into something called tomo breathing, which, don't get scared when we start talking about some of these Eastern philosophy techniques, because these things, again, have been around in every culture
Mhm.
for millennia.
Perhaps we should discuss the prayer aspect.
We will. We'll get there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So tomo
It's pretty
breathing
cool.
is, or has been, kind of rediscovered through a Polish gentleman named Wim Hof. All right. And he has, that's the third book of this kind of triumvirate here, is the Wim Hof method by Wim Hof. He is a guy that has introduced not only breathing, but also cold therapy to the Western world. And I love it. I enjoyed aspects of his book. I will say that there are some socio-political things that I could have done without in the book, but the science is backed up through research and is very sound. And this all stems from these studies in the 80s at Harvard.
Thank you, Lance, for the gold pills. Glad to see you today, love.
Where they were going into India and going up into the mountains, and they were sitting with these monks who were able to sit in very simple garb and melt circles in the snow. And there's actually video from this Harvard study.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you are able to raise your core body temperature to the point that it's not that you don't feel the cold, it just doesn't bother you. And Wim Hof went on to, he's run marathons on Mount Everest in shorts. Barefoot in shorts. Same thing in Antarctica. Packed himself in ice for 90 minutes at a time. This guy has really bumped this cold training up. And I mean, at 60 years old, he can balance himself on one arm and hold the position, like just tip himself forward on one arm and hold himself there for minutes at a time.
That's wild. Thank you, Braves Piano 29, for the cookie.
All through the act of breathing.
It's amazing.
Then we get into the cold plunging, which I know you want to talk about. So what do you want to know about cold plunging?
Okay. So the breathing aspect helps with, it can help regrow your stem cells. It can help with your inflammation. It obviously helps with your heart rate, any physical activities. You can have better sleep through doing this. All these things it can activate through the body. And then a lot of people are just starting to understand about cold plunging. You've been doing that for a while. Now, you got into that also because your clients were doing that.
Yes.
So Herschel is a filmmaker. And so he travels around with a lot of these very interesting people, and they're always doing things. So he's come home learning all these new things, and it's been a wonderful journey for us. But cold plunge is one of them. You want to explain about Steve or cold plunge?
Yeah. So
how that ties into the nervous system.
So again, Wim Hof gave us, this reintroduction into cold plunging, and cold water therapy has been around forever. He didn't by any means discover it. He wasn't the first person to talk about it, but he's the guy that just kind of popularized it for the modern world. And this is simply exposing yourself to cold water, which, I mean, anytime you stick your hand into the shower in the morning and it's too cold, yipe, yipe, you don't want to be in there. But there are physiological things that come with cold plunging, and there are psychological things that come with cold plunging.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the physical first. So the act of getting into the cold water, what it actually does, and I mean, there's research upon research upon research, reduces anxiety, attacks brown fat, reduces inflammation. All of these things can just come from getting into cold water. Oh, I don't have a plunge tank. I don't want to spend $10,000 on a plunge tank. Perfect. Jump in a cold shower.
Yep.
Simply get into the shower, turn it on, and stand there until it warms up. And trust me, that sucks. I actually hate cold showers more than I do jumping in cold water. Because you don't get that whole immersion experience, and there's always one part of you that's warm and one part of you that's cold, and it's awful. I hate cold showers. But what it is actually doing, this is where you get into the Wim Hof book. Your blood vessels have these little tiny muscles in them. I missed this in my physical, but there's these little tiny muscles that are connected to your blood vessels, and the cold shock makes those work, and that's how it's pushing the blood. The blood is pushing through, it's attacking the brown fat, which is what surrounds all of your organs. That is what is allowing you to get into that deep place. It is able to realign the nervous system. There are people that have tremors that the cold plunging has helped.
Strokes, even
stroke victims have been helped with
MS.
There's all sorts of different
of
things that help with this. And I encourage you to read Wim Hof's book, because I can't even recite all of the different physiological things that cold plunging can do. But I want to talk about the mindset, because that is what has helped me more than I think anything. When I started doing this, I found myself cleaning things that I don't normally clean when it was time to go get in the cold plunge. I'm really thinking of David Goggins here, because Goggins talks about, everybody thinks I'm this, incredible, awesome runner. I'm so strong and all this. He said, I often sit for 30 minutes and stare at my shoes, trying to get up the will to go do the run.
Yeah.
That's how it was with cold plunging. I would, I haven't cleaned this in 2 months. Let me go clean that. Let me organize this. Oh, I need to put this battery on. And then I catch myself, and it's like, man, I'm just trying to delay getting in the cold water. So you just go get in the cold water. And there is a mental toughness aspect to this. You jump in the cold water, it takes your breath away, and then your immediate reaction is, I gotta get out. And once you fight through that, and I was very lucky for Steve Leach to be there when I first started exposing myself to really cold water, because I was doing, 59 to 62 degrees was about all as I could get out of my little plunge tub that I ended up buying. I went to see Steve for some work on Channel of the Bones, the film that we have coming out in the middle of October, or not October, in the middle of March. And he had put together his plunge tub to start cold water training for the English Channel and for the North Channel.
Right.
And I said, okay, let's do this. And what's the temperature? 46 degrees. So I said, okay, I'm gonna get in, and
certain things shrivel.
I want to do 2 minutes. I'm not going to talk about that. This is a polite company show. So I get in this cold water. I just go straight in, because I've learned that it's better to just embrace the suck at this point and jump in. And I do this, and I said, okay, I want to do 2 minutes. And Steve just started talking to me, and he said, okay, find a fixed point. So I found a fixed point. And he said, you really want to get out right now? I said, yes, I do. It's like, just breathe. Same thing Wim Hof talks about. Same thing James Nestor talks about. Sometimes, and what do we do when women are going through labor and they're in a ton of pain?
Right.
What do we tell them to do?
Very specific
we tell them
breathing.
to breathe. Right.
Very specific methods.
Deep breaths in, slow breaths out. Deep breaths in, slow breaths out. By the time I was done, I wanted to do 2 minutes. I was in for 6, because Steve's a jerk. I just want to throw that out there. Love you, Steve.
He has a tendency to not tell you the time.
Yeah, exactly.
He just
lets
you go.
What was amazing here, I did this, and then we had this, this big, fit, strong professional triathlete that showed up looking good in his Speedo. I'm very jealous of how good he looked in an American flag Speedo. But he got in this thing, and he was reverse planking and screaming like a little girl the whole time, because he just could not get the back of his shoulders into this cold plunge tub. And, by the end of it, Steve's like, you're like number 6 in the nation right now. I can get you to number 3 through mindset, because mindset is so powerful.
Yeah.
And to this point, like, I can get in the cold shower, and I mean, I'm still a little timid, but I just jump into the cold shower now, even though I hate it. It doesn't affect me. And when I was in Arizona filming last week, we had a pool, and I think it was about 50-degree water, and I cold plunged a couple times, and then I got some of my other crew to come and do it with me, because I was talking about it. And I looked down at my watch thinking, okay, I'm going to do 5 minutes. and I'd been in for 12. And I started swimming a little bit just to warm up. And I was like, let's see how long I can take this. And then I checked again. I'm at 15. And then finally I got out at 20 minutes. And I that still blows my mind.
Boss.
That
I can't do
it's
that.
not even a boss thing. It's just
I'm not there yet.
It's just a mindset thing. You can do hard things.
Yeah.
If you'll just begin the process. So what am I saying? Am I saying go to NeuroCover and use my special code to buy a plunge tub? No, don't do that. Go get in the cold shower.
Yeah.
Or take your regular warm shower and then count to 30, or even just what the Wim Hof method is to start with. Just turn the hot water off, make it cold, and take 25 slow breaths. Once you can do that, maybe you're ready to cold plunge. But it's all just a little incremental thing. Just do a little bit more each day. And that's what I keep telling people here lately is it's not about making these radical changes in your life. I'm working with Steve Leach, who's a marathon swimmer. He swam 30 miles across the Molokai-Kahibi Channel last April. He's going to be swimming over 40 miles in the English Channel coming up here soon.
In a few months.
And you know what? You're probably not ready to do that. I'm not ready to do that. But you know what I was ready to do? I was ready to learn how to swim 100 yards in a pool. I was ready to run a half marathon, then a marathon. Now I'm training for an Ironman 70.3. I didn't just decide I'm going to go do a 70.3. Right. I had to take it incrementally. So that's what I encourage everybody to do, because we're in this world where we're just piled upon all the time with all these different things. What's one thing you can do today?
Yeah.
What's one thing you can do to start pushing yourself forward?
Thank you, Trick Pony, for the cookie.
Now, you wanted to talk about the prayer thing.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things, and this was really cool, because one of the things I started as soon as the pandemic nonsense started was...
Come on, it's the flu.
Yes.
According to CDC, it's the flu.
Hey, first show on YouTube. I'm going to be the one that gets it pulled. I love it. But when all of that started, one of my first reactions was, okay, I'm cooped up in the house. I need to start meditating. And it was hard. My meditation practice began as controlled naps, because that's all I could do. But the longer I went about it, I started experimenting with breath techniques. And what we've learned through James Nestor's research is that most of the prayers, the Ave Maria, the Om Nam Sham Debat, all of these different yogi techniques, all of these prayers to do to say the whole thing takes about 6.5 seconds. The average human breath rate, it takes the average human about 6.5 seconds to breathe. So even prayer across, sorry, I just kicked a little thing here. Even prayer across multiple cultures, across multiple religions,
for thousands of years,
tens of thousands of years, is connected to breath.
It's kind of fascinating.
We need to learn to breathe again.
Yeah. So what would be some of the techniques, like how obviously you should read the book. The book is fabulous.
Hang on one second. I want to read this little comment about the sleep apnea.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And sleep apnea is definitely one of the things that they talk about in the book.
Yes.
That learning to breathe properly, especially cutting out mouth breathing. One of the big parts of this book. I want to talk about the study real quick.
Even for the dental aspects of it.
So they did a study that Stanford wouldn't do. Right? James Nestor and this other pulmonaut from Sweden, they devised this study, and Stanford said, we're not going to do that. That's unethical. So they had to volunteer to do it themselves. So they did a bunch of battery of tests, and then they agreed to have their noses plugged with silicone. They stuffed a bunch of stuff up into their noses and siliconed their noses shut and mouth breathed for 10 days. Almost immediately, the snoring went up 4,000% for both of them. They had increased sleep apnea. They had all of these different things that were popping off, and their whole physical health plummeted because they were mouth breathing exclusively. After the 10 days, they removed it. They went into a 10-day control period where they just kind of recovered from that.
Like a cleanse kind of.
And they were eating the same foods, doing the same workouts, they're taking the same metrics all throughout the entire study. Then they did the opposite. They taped their mouths shut. And they just kept their mouths shut. Yes, it was Ash.
It was awful, Ash.
From everything that you read in the book, it sounds like the most awful, horrendous thing ever.
Thank you, Victoria, for the can. Thank you, hun.
But then they taped their mouths shut and everything switched off. They went from hours of snoring a night to minutes of snoring a night.
And I believe they ended up doing like a little bit of medical tape, just like right here. So they still could move the corners or, I mean, it wasn't like all, it was just a little reminder, particularly sleeping.
Yep.
That was the big thing for sleeping. And I know sometimes I do, depending on how I can wake up and my mouth is open and it's because my head's tilted back too far. I've shifted weird, but I try not to because it causes bad breath. It causes deterioration. It causes cavities. It causes all kinds of stuff just if you're sleeping with your mouth open.
Yep.
But on the flip of that, even with the apnea with the machine, I remember reading in the book, it had some negative effects because of the controlled bursts. And while it can save your life, I'm not saying throw that out, but there's ups and downs to both.
Yep. And there has been just time after time, again, we've had this research done, discovered, and abandoned.
And suppressed.
There are things throughout, literally there was a guy that went around in the 1800s and spent some time with, I believe, the Sioux Indian tribes.
Yeah, it was a series of Native American tribes.
And he discovered that the women would literally stay awake with their babies and pinch their mouths shut to teach their babies from infancy to close their mouths. And that was the last epitaph that he wrote in his book right before he died, because he was dealing with a lot of health conditions. Was if you take one thing away from this book, close your mouth. So we run around and we have our mouths hanging open for a long time, and we really need to close our mouths. So I saw Ash talking about taping hubby's mouth shut. So there's actually a product called hostage tape, and it is for mouth taping, and it's just a little postage stamp Charlie Chaplin mustache moved down an inch. And it can do amazing things. I have not done this. I really want to try it. But there is that product. There's a lot of products online to help with this now. And that's what we want to talk about. We wanted to talk about this jaw toner.
Yes.
And there's a couple different ones. We have the one that's actually called Jaw Toner.
Do you want me to go get it?
It's jawtoner.com. I mean, if you want, you
can. I'll go get it.
There's that, and there's one called Alpha Jaw, and it's just this little silicone thing that you stick in your mouth, and you bite down on the thing. Yeah, I was reading a comment for you. Ash was talking about the hostage tape. Yeah, I mean, if you're supposed to be using a machine, I know some people that have done the sleep study. They got the machine. They don't want to use it. My dad is one of them. They just don't want to use these machines. And I get it. They're uncomfortable. They're terrible, but they can help, and they can help save your life until you get some of these other things. If you start doing some of these exercises, they are wonderful. So here is the jaw toner, and this thing looks awful. I will actually demonstrate this thing. I won't have Mary Ellen do it because that would just be indecent. My shirt. But this is jaw toner, and this is the intermediate one. They actually have several of these, but it just looks like this. It looks kind of like a bite guard, and there's a couple different ways you can use it, but it has like that. And you just
that's it. But it strengthens everything through here. It also helps with your under the bags, ladies. It helps with your neck.
There's a lot of different versions of this product, and they have different levels of strength. I've actually gotten to the point I feel like I maybe need to move up a level, because sometimes I feel like I'm about to bite this thing in half. I use this quite extensively in January. I did a 5-minute cold shower every day, and there were days that was painful, but I just and I was very unhappy doing my cold shower.
It's a lovely look.
It is. But these things, again, they're little things, and that's not an expensive tool. That's like $40.
But I mean, your jawline, like we started photographing when we got it, we were like, all right, well, let's try this. So we each took profile pics, And mine even looks better. Like my neck is a little more firm, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But his jaw is getting more chiseled, and it's just that little thing, just a couple minutes a day.
And I mean, again, if you don't want, you say, okay, Herschel, that's $40. I don't want to spend $40 on a piece of silicone. Awesome. Go buy some chewing gum. Because Brad Pitt for Troy, he wanted for Achilles, he wanted that real strong jawline.
Yeah, that's
so
how
he just chewed gum for like 3 months straight, and he was able to get that chiseled jawline. So you don't have to spend money. This stuff, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about all this breathing technique is this isn't a drug. This isn't an expensive piece of exercise equipment. It's inhaling and exhaling.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
So you can make a huge positive benefit in your life by breathing. And I think it's such a cool expression of things that we should have learned. We should, because I mean, people, somebody in the chat, the 3 Fallen 1, I'm a firm believer that shut mouth is the best mouth. That's great on a lot of terms, but I was told all growing up, don't walk around with your mouth hanging open. It'll get stuck like that. That's good colloquial wisdom, but we were never told why. And there was a reason for it.
Yeah.
But I don't believe any of my family knew this.
Mine didn't. I mean, my dad was a doctor, and I mean, if
my family were coal farmers going, coal miners going back. They didn't know that, but they knew shut your mouth. So there's something intrinsic in our minds that we knew we should keep our mouths shut.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself just breathing, one of the things you can do, just kind of, if you're just looking at something, put a finger up there. Or you can do the hostage tape. But the more you can breathe. Now, if you can't breathe through your nose, there are a lot of different techniques that you can use. Saline rinses, I'm a big believer in saline rinses.
Yeah. For
when
your
I
nasal.
was in Florida, I went from the Ohio Valley to Texas to the Ohio Valley to Florida, and I had to do a singing gig in Florida. And my whole sinuses just said, "Bro, we're mad at you," and everything just collapsed down into my sinuses. And immediately I said, okay, I need to go get some nasal med and some distilled water. And I just started flushing my nose 2 or 3 times a day. That's not expensive. That's like $16 for the little packets and the little nose appliance thing and some distilled water. And I was able to. It's much
easier than a neti pot.
Much easier than a neti pot.
Much
and
easier.
I was able to clear out my sinuses and be ready to do this show in 3 days. And it didn't cost a lot. It wasn't a big, horrendous thing that I had to go through. I didn't have to take drugs. And I get sick less because I'm doing these breathing exercises. And that's another added benefit. When you start to get your breath in control and you're taking in oxygen and also increasing your carbon dioxide, because that's
another interesting thing that they talk about, the benefits of carbon dioxide. And I had no idea, because we're always taught it's this awful thing, and we're going to,
that's what the plants breathe.
Yeah, there's a reason, reasons. There's a dog under there. I'm sorry, Dexy. I was trying to move my foot. I kicked
when you're able to start breathing, getting these essential elements of O2 and CO2 into your body, it actually makes you healthier.
Yes. Fun facts. Fun facts. What else? What else have we learned on this? I forget, you talk so much faster than most of the guests that I'm used to working with. He's so much more. All right, that's just how he is. So
Victoria, that sounds like drowning. What do you mean?
Explain, dear. Because I have the chat pulled up here, so we're watching. Just going forward, I always monitor the Pilled chat. So if you're on that platform and you want to communicate with us live, always go on there. And that's in general for America Rising. We always do that with Pilled. I don't know what she means. Maybe she'll type it. Fear of water. Maybe.
You might be talking about mouth taping. You might be talking about breathing. So one of the great things about the James Nestor book and the Wim Hof book, if you get the Audible versions of them, if you get the audiobook versions,
particularly of the Breathe. That's the one that I have.
Particularly of the Breathe. The last 20 minutes of the book is nothing but guided exercise through several of these different techniques. And one of them is alternate nostril breathing. They do a little bit of Toma. Okay, nasal rinse. Yes, it can feel a little bit like drowning.
Gotcha.
And it's just something you gotta get used to. It's one of those things that you're gonna do it, you're gonna cough, you're gonna sputter, you're not gonna look sexy doing a nasal rinse,
Mm,
especially if you're
yeah.
using, especially if you're using a neti pot. I think that the little
The
bottle
little
is a lot
yeah.
easier. I won't say what we normally call that around here because it's not, again, family friendly. But
We have fun here.
you're not. Here's the thing: you're not gonna die. All right. It can
So
feel a little bit like drowning, especially if it comes down your throat. But if you use the little bottle and
mhm,
just use exactly the prescribed amount,
mhm.
use about half of it for one nostril, half of it for the
Yeah.
other, it is controlled enough. You're probably going to cough. There's going to be a lot of gunk that comes out. It's going to be not
I
pretty.
just hang my head over the sink and let it
Exactly.
drain.
But I would highly recommend,
Yeah.
especially if you have dry sinuses
Mhm,
or you are a little bit congested a lot,
mhm,
I would highly recommend starting with just the saline rinse. And
mhm.
if you start to see a little bit of improvement there, then you might want to go see an ENT and really start talking, because there's a lot of things they can do to help. A
Yeah,
lot of people have deviated septums and they don't even know it. That's what
yeah.
Mike Rowe ended up finding out, was the man who had a complete voice career had a deviated septum and was never aware of it until he read James Nestor's work and then
Mhm,
went and got checked out.
mhm.
Then he was able to actually breathe for the first time in 50 some odd years. And you make sure you go to a credible one, because there's something called empty nose syndrome that sounds incredibly terrible, and that's
Oh,
when they
yeah.
drill out too much of your sinus
Yeah, no,
and
and
you're
they have to
not
put
able
it
to,
back.
well,
You
if they
can't
can.
if the yeah, it's
And that's a,
yeah,
because
that's a whole other thing.
your nose, and the reason you want to breathe through your nose more than you do your mouth, because when you take a big breath in with your mouth, there's nothing filtering the air, there's nothing warming the
Right,
air,
because that's
especially
what the
when you're
hair and the
outside.
cilia, that's the
Yeah, the
function.
cilia in the
We
nose.
have everything up in here that yeah,
It's
sorry, I'm
temperature regulation. It is a type of filter.
mhm,
All of these things are amazing.
mhm.
Okay, yeah, Patriot Drummer, you can't tape your mouth shut, you'll drown, severe COPD. Yeah,
Okay.
again, not a medical expert here. I'm just telling you what I've read and researched. There are
Mhm.
probably methods that you could use to simulate this, but that would be definitely something to talk to
Yeah,
your doctor about before you
definitely
try
on that.
any of this type of
Our
stuff.
his best friend, he's a musician, also has that and struggles with it, and he's had one of the surgeries, and when he had the surgery done, like, it was life-changing for him,
Yeah,
just life-changing. He could finally function and do so much more, but yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm,
But there are people that have COPD that have done some of these breath techniques and they have reclaimed their lives. So I would definitely look at Tomo breathing and some of,
mhm.
look at because that's all the Wim Hof method really is Tomo breathing. And that's very short, quick breaths and quick exhales. And it kind of puts you almost into a hyperventilative state,
Mm.
but you really do, you warm up and you feel this. There's no other word for it. It's a euphoric feeling. It's a
It's
little
an
buzz
adrenaline.
type feeling
Yeah.
that you get. And it's definitely something you never do driving. You do it while you're laying on a couch at home, and you're completely safe. These are techniques that you absolutely have to do in controlled environments, and you have to
Mhm.
do slow. I mean, even cold plunging.
Yeah.
I had an instance in early January. I went out to do a cold plunge,
Yeah, we had to have
and
talk about that.
there was a lot of self talk. I went out and
I
I
was not
did
happy.
a 36-degree cold plunge, and I had to break the ice to get into the cold plunge tub. And I went in and I did what I almost always do, just straight all the way under, and my chest locked up while I was under. And I had to force my head back up, and it hurt. And I was gonna try and stay in for 2 minutes or a minute and a half that day. And it clicked to a minute, and I had the thought of, if I stay in any longer than a minute, Mary Ellen's gonna have to come fish me out of this plunge tub, and that's gonna be ugly.
Yeah.
So I chose to get out under my own power. But at that point,
You would have been grounded, young man.
I said,
Totally grounded.
I'm not gonna do a cold plunge under 40 degrees by myself. It's not safe. And I decided that for
No.
me. And it's one of those things of know your limits. And I felt
Mhm.
really like I was kind of wussing out on it until I temped the cold water in my shower, and the cold water in the shower was 46 degrees.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel bad about it after that. But this is definitely something of, you are your own unique human, and nobody knows your body better than you.
Mhm.
So you have to take stock of what you're trying and
Right.
try it at a level that is going to be safe for you. Now, I'm not saying don't push your limits, because if you never push your limits, then you're never going to
You're not gonna
grow.
grow. Yeah.
But comfort is poison. If you always do what's comfortable, it will slowly poison you to death.
That's epic.
Yeah.
That's epic.
That's one of our
we need to clip that. That's epic.
That's one of our Forge Legends techniques. Comfort is poison. And I have rarely seen that not to be the case. If you just push a little bit and a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're going to fail doing this. And failure is great too. Failing forward is the way to go. Because if you take a step and you fall flat on your face and then you stand up, well, you still moved 3 feet. Even though you fell flat on your face. So failing forward is great. So I failed all through my early meditation practice.
Yeah. Well, and we meditate different. You do it through breath. I do it through sound. So, I mean, there's many different ways to do that. I will say, like, so for people out there that are like, I don't think I can do a cold shower. I don't like them. I do fine with them in the summer. I'm fine with it. In the winter, it's harder for me. But one of the things he taught me was if I can just get my head under there for 30 seconds, like, right.
Okay. So this is really great. This is a really great cold plunging thing.
Hand me my drink.
Yeah. So
thank you.
You don't actually have to get your whole body immersed to get the benefits of a cold plunge. Now, when we're talking about cold plunging, we're talking 11 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Not a day, a week.
So you could do a minute and a half.
Exactly.
Here and there.
And that's where you start to get the benefits. But here's the fun fact. You don't have to get your whole body involved. Most of the heat receptors in our body, fun fact, are in your face. That's why your face is one of the first things that heats up when you're having any type of a heat-related stress. So simply getting a salad bowl with some ice water and dunking your face in a salad bowl will start the process of the benefit.
Right.
And you also don't have, I know I'm talking about 36 degrees and 46 degree cold plunges. I've been doing this for a year. Okay. 62 degrees is generally the accepted temperature at which you start to get some of the benefits from cold plunging. That's only slightly worse than jumping into a 75 degree pool on an 85 degree day.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks a little bit. And then all of a sudden you'll hit this point where you're like, oh, this is too warm. This is too warm. When I first brought Steve up here,
wanting to challenge yourself.
Yeah, well, and you just get used to it. I'm at a point now. Steve and I had this joke the other day because he's hot and heavy in this training because he's going to be swimming in 52 degree water if he's lucky.
So Herschel and Steve will be on America Meeting Rise live this Friday night to premiere their documentary about everything that he's been talking about with the training. It's going to be epic. Please come.
Yeah. So he looked at me on a call the other day. He said, "Yeah, there's not a lot of hot water in my life anymore." And
but his wife has it all. That's the other joke with him.
He's actually to the point that
she's adorable.
Hot water burns his skin, and he has a really hard. Now I had a really hard time with the cold showers because when it came time to lather up with a loofah,
like needles at first.
That was not happening. So the soap portion of the shower had to happen once the warm water at least came on. But I'm a person that used to like scald my skin off in the shower because I felt it made me feel better.
Yeah.
But you'll actually get to a point that it wakes you up. When you breathe properly, you don't stagger out of bed in the morning. When you are experiencing these cold showers, they wake you up. It's actually a more bracing way of getting out of bed than the warm shower.
Well, and most really successful people, I've noticed through podcasts and books and everything, they're all talking about doing the cold plunge. From Charlie Kirk to Bongino to, I mean, all of the big
Rogan,
Mark
all these,
like all of the ones that we tend in our sphere tend to notice, they're all talking about doing these things. Most of your millionaire level people, this is part of their daily routine. It's just ingrained in them, or your athletes.
Tony Robbins actually talked about it, and he said, I get in the cold plunge every morning, and there is not a single morning that I want to get in the cold plunge. And I totally feel that. I was at the gym showering after a swim the other day, and the old guys that were showering next to me, I know I was splashing them with some cold water, and they were looking at me like, what are you doing? Like, why is that water so cold? But it's just, it's another Goggins technique. It's what I do now. He said that's what you have to start to train your body. When you get up at 6 a.m., when you get up at 4:30 a.m., you don't want to get out of bed, you just have to tell yourself, this is what we do now. And I really had to put that to the test when I was doing the 75 hard. it was just, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
No, this is what you do now. And it is a mindset thing. And there's so much that I am learning about mindset that will help get everybody through everything that's coming
it
and
goes
that we're
back to
going
that
through
old thing
currently.
that we used to study in school, mind over matter. That was a big thing when we were in college.
That's a
That
lot
was
of
a
this.
statement that everybody talked about. Looks like our chat doesn't go to the doctor. I don't either very much. I have like one that I trust, and that's about it. We could do another episode on different. Yeah, I'll think about that.
You know, I think
You want to talk about the sauna?
in a minute, because
Okay.
I want to address this,
Okay.
because I had this same thought working with Matt Bodrow with the folks at Apogee, because he talks about, you know,
Great
how
group.
terrible the education system is. I don't think anybody here is going to have any problem saying that the public education system in this country is a train wreck, and actually maybe even globally. But he said there are wonderful people in the system. It's just the system that's broken. He said, I'll never support the system, but the people that are working in the system, they're really good people.
There are still
amazing doctors out there that really do care.
Yes.
They work in a flawed, affected system.
Yeah, that's true.
There are some just something to bear in mind. You know, I think there is a definite healthy dose of skepticism that needs to come, because you know, nobody ever taught, my doctors never talked to me when I said, hey, I can't breathe. I'm a singer that can't breathe. And the answer was, here, have an inhaler.
Right. It was never, how's your technique? Are you doing this? How's your posture?
Exactly.
Is your rib cage expanded? Are you counting? Are you, all of these little stupid things.
Yeah. And
that fixed it.
Exactly. And exercise.
Yeah.
We've forgotten, because I think the 80s and the muscle movement kind of killed exercise for so many people, because they thought, oh, I can never be that. Yeah. That's fine. I don't look like a marathoner.
No.
I don't look like somebody who enjoys running, because I don't. I'm not a natural runner. I'm not a natural swimmer. I'm not a natural athlete. And that's something that I kind of had to come to terms with over the last 2 years. I've become an athlete. You know, I'm a guy. I mean, I've ran a marathon. That's something that less than 2% of the population at any given time can do. I'm getting ready to do the Ironman. That's something that even fewer people can do. If you look at Steve Leach, he does not look like an athlete.
No. He looks great for his
but
age.
He's a 50-year-old man that's about to do a series of swim. He's about to do a series of swims that only 24 people on the planet have done. He's about to attempt this thing. So,
hi, Johnny. Thank you for the shades.
It's not about becoming an Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
You know, you don't have to be Commando Arnold Schwarzenegger to be healthy. So don't get hung up on fitness as something that you have to, you know, have a trainer and do a training program and drink protein shakes and all this other stuff. It's simply going for a walk and learning how to breathe.
Simple stretches. Simple stretches. And if you can time your breathing with the stretches, I find that very beneficial.
Absolutely.
Was it the 5 second in, 5 second out? Is that the most basic one? Because he was talking about 5 breaths a minute instead of 18.
Yeah. So
in the Nestor book,
most people breathe too much. And the easiest way to think about this is a military technique they teach. I think they teach everybody. I'm not a military person. I just know a lot of military people. It's called box breathing. And it's simply 4 second breath in, 4 second hold, 4 seconds out. And this is what they teach in combat when you're in a combat situation, to start doing this breathing technique, because it slows the heart rate. It calms adrenaline. It does all of these things, and it's simple breathing. So that's where I would recommend that people start. If you really want to start breathing better, try even 3 minutes. Set a timer on your phone. Everybody has a stopwatch connected to them now. Just set 5 minutes and just 4 beats in, hold, 4 out, 4. Then you take it up. I get frustrated with a lot of these written techniques, because I can do very long inhales and very long exhales. Again, been a singer for 20 years.
Right.
You may not be there, and that's fine. Just start small.
Yep.
None of this stuff has to be hard. None of this stuff has to be difficult. You want to start challenging yourself? Yeah, maybe you pick up the breath book and you do alternate nostril breathing, or you get into Wim Hof and do Tomo breathing. Do what's right for you.
Mhm.
Start small, but challenge yourself, and you'll be amazed what you can actually pull off.
I think that's a good lesson. And I again, I really like looking at things that were perhaps ancient knowledge. It's been rediscovered and suppressed, but there's no real cost to it. I mean, adjusting your breath, I mean, what the book, I think it's like $707 or $10 on Audible. I mean, it's nothing. I glanced up. Thank you, Lance, for the 700 gold pills. Thank you, hun. But, I mean, total investment if you went hog wild and got like a jaw toner and all the books. I mean, you're still looking at $70 or something if you did
If you
everything
did
that
all
we
three books,
in a jaw toner, like I mean,
I
it's
mean, let's
still
say you go hog wild.
okay.
Okay, let's say you go
Hypothetical, like
hog wild. You bought all three books. You're talking, let's say $8 a piece, so $25
mhm.
for all three books. You get yourself a jaw toner that's $40. You get the full set. I think it's 50, so you're into 75. And you decide to go on something like Neurocover or Ice Pod,
And
and
if
you
you
pick
bought the
yourself up
nasal
a
thing, that's at Walgreens. It's like $15.
yeah. So we're what
You know?
you can pick up a plunge tub
Yeah.
cheap for about $80. Right. So now we're talking what 150, and
Debbie, you're so funny.
you know
Teasing Lance.
you get the full jaw toner kit. I think it's 65 or $70. So $250. You have all the tools and all the information you need to start
Mhm.
this journey. Am
Or
I suggesting that? Absolutely not.
I would start with the one
Start with
book.
breath.
And I like the Audible one again because there's the exercises at
Yeah.
the end. You have a stopwatch on your phone, and what he talks about is just changing your breathing pattern a few minutes a day. It's not saying that every breath of every day has to be done this way. It's if you make time and you start with like 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, and maybe you get to where you're doing it while you're doing another task or whatever you're doing subconsciously. It's not that much, and then it will slowly alter and bleed over. Like your breath every day will change,
Yeah.
and it will get better.
Now, I think this is the point to end on, and it's another.
Oh, we didn't talk about the sauna.
I mean, well, okay, well, I can talk about
Real
the sauna
quick,
real quick.
real quick.
Thermocycling is a thing, right?
Yeah.
You spend time in either the cold plunge or a sauna, and that allows you to change rapidly your internal temperatures, and it starts to really amplify all of those things: the brown fat loss, the anxiety. I
Mhm.
mean, Steve's daughter dealt with crippling anxiety, and she has
Yeah.
decided she wanted to cold plunge. When I interviewed her for the documentary, she could barely get 3 words out. When we were down there for the premiere last month, she had a 30-minute conversation with
Oh,
us.
she was so sweet.
And
Such a charming young lady.
it's incredible that she has decided that she wanted to do the cold plunge, and she's actually got a
Mhm.
target to do a cold plunge of some variety every day this year, and she's
Mhm.
gotten in that cold water every single day.
Mhm.
Huge anxiety help. So if you can add in on top of cold plunging and breathing, sauna work, either a dry sauna or a steam sauna, it doesn't matter. It's about getting your core temperature up and
Mhm.
then dropping it, or vice
Mhm.
versa. It really, really helps. No stopwatch on, if you have a flip phone, then maybe you don't have a stopwatch. But you know what?
I
Everybody
did
can
not have a
count.
stopwatch.
If you have a flip phone, you wouldn't have one. All right.
Huh.
So I want
Hmm.
to,
Okay.
I'm going to end on this because
Okay.
it's another great Goggins quote, because he was on with Andrew Huberman, who talks a lot about the jaw toners. So
Okay.
that's a great little interview. He talks a lot about mindset, but he said everybody is looking for the magic pill. He was
Oh, yeah.
specifically talking about cold plunge.
Oh, yeah.
So here's the deal. Are any one of these things going to be the magic pill that fixes everything in your life? Absolutely not. They are all small techniques that
Mhm.
will maybe help improve things incrementally. You do enough small incremental changes in your life, you're going to see big results.
Mhm.
For me, it started with meditation, and it started with 10 small promises I made myself every single day. And it took me a long time to get to the point where those are consistent.
Mhm.
And I still mess up. I'm not a perfect human being. We're all flawed. It's a fallen world. We're all flawed. We're all broken. We're all just looking for a little grace. And make sure you have grace for yourself. None of these things are going to be a magic pill. None of these things are going to fix all of your problems, but they will start you on a path to create the mindset to become the person that can solve your problems.
That's good. I like that. All right. Was a good one. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, dear.
Absolutely.
You can come back and talk to us about more things.
I'm allowed to come back in your room?
Yes, you can come back in. This is my room. It's my special room. It's my little attic space where I do this all the time now. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you so much for all the gold pills. And I'm so grateful for anyone that comes and spends part of their Sunday with me. So thank you guys. Please share the show. And there will be another one, of course, this evening will be Patriot Theater. And I'll be back tomorrow afternoon with Truth Blitz and Tuesday and all the days. Yeah, we have so much media stuff coming. There's so much coming. You guys have no idea. There's so much in the works. I'm excited. So thank you, everyone. Have a blessed day.